Welcome, everyone. As the attendees are funneling into the session, just a couple of notes that we've put in the chat. Everyone is on mute, but we do encourage questions using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And if for some reason we run out of time, we will send a response to your question via email. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website, as well as included in the follow-up email that you will receive later this week. And then, just for those of you who may not know all that Engage to Excel does or what we offer, we provide recruiting, onboarding, employee recognition, manager development, and survey solutions. You can learn more about those solutions at www.engagetoexcel.com. And a little bit about our speakers today for successful leadership. It's in the eye of the follower. We are joined by Leslie Minchin. She is the VP of Transformation and Enablement here at Engage to Excel, as well as Dr. Jack Wiley. He is, excuse me, he's our Chief Scientific Officer. Both Jack, and he's also a book author. His most recent book, The Employee-Centric Manager, is the base for our manager training service that we call ECM, or Employee-Centric Training, and will be spoken about today in our call. Leslie and Jack work closely together. Leslie has conducted several of Jack's training programs throughout this year, as well as some co-led ones as well. So it's great to have both of you here with us. Leslie, I am going to send it over to you to get started.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I get very excited talking about this topic here, but I'd like to just kind of give you an idea of what to expect today. So taking a look at our agenda, what I'd like to start with is when you think about what makes a successful leader, and you think about that question, a great place to start is really looking at the employees and asking those employees, when you think of a successful leader, what does that mean? So today, we're going to share with you some insights that Dr. Jack Wiley has discovered in his extensive research on the very question, what is the most important thing you want from your manager? And then from that research, he has created the employee-centric manager framework. So we'll walk through that framework today, and we're going to share the 8 universal attributes that make up a successful manager. We'll also talk about why is that even important? Why does it matter? And why is it helpful to understand what your employees most want? And then we're going to actually take you through a couple of exercises that come straight out of the ECM workshop. I really love this opportunity for you guys to get a sample of that. And it's going to give you a chance to do some self-reflection. We'll give you a chance to walk away with even a few ideas of how you can improve, even in the slightest way, so that you can focus and be a little bit more of an employee-centric manager. And then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. So we'll go ahead and jump right into getting started. So I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Jack.
All right. As Leslie intimated, we understand that leading others is really a reciprocal process. It's a social interaction that occurs between people. It's something that is important to understand from both points of view. It's not really just about those who lead. In fact, successful leadership depends far more on the follower's perceptions of the leader than on the leader's actual abilities. So in that sense, it is a true statement that leadership is in the eyes of the follower. So if followers could design the manager of their dream, what attributes would they incorporate into that prototype? And if we advance, we're going to talk a little bit about the employee-centric manager research. Now, this is the very question I asked, and I asked it to 80,000 people around the world. And this includes 27 countries, representing about 85% of the world's gross domestic product. And we made sure that as we collected these data, we had representative samples, not only from each country, but also each major industry group, job type, job level, genders, and age group as well. So the goal here was to, and I want to be very clear about this, the goal was to find a universal answer to the question of what employees most wanted from their immediate boss. The universal answer, based entirely on the employee voice, does include key attributes. And we're going to talk in just a moment about what those key attributes are. But first, we have a poll question.
If you ever join one of the workshops, you'll notice one of the things we like to do is get people involved as quickly as possible to keep it exciting. So we're going to do that today. So successful leadership. If you'll take a minute to answer this question, what is the most important thing that you want from your manager? So taking a look at these options and give us your thoughts.
We'll give it another 30 seconds, Leslie. All right, you guys want to get your answers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to end the poll. And Leslie, here are the results.
Survey says, oh my goodness, I'm shocked. I don't want to steal any thunder, but this looks pretty accurate to findings that Dr. Jack has had before. So most important, we're seeing here at the top of the list, support and understanding. People most want that from their manager, followed by all of these other fantastic. But I'll hand it back over to you, Jack.
All right. Thanks, Leslie. I appreciate that. Very interesting survey results from the audience. First of all, thank you for participating. And interestingly enough, the most frequently identified attribute that you stated, showing support and understanding, is also the most frequently identified attribute from our global sample as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the 8 universal attributes. First of all, we have showing support and understanding. This is about being available, being accessible, being a good listener, helpful to employees, considerate, and building them up. A second attribute is treating employees with dignity and respect. This was also frequently mentioned by our poll audience today. The basic idea here is that employees want their manager to presume that they're there for good intentions, to do a good job, to make a contribution. They also want their input to be sought out by the manager, and they want the manager to show care, care both in terms of physical as well as psychological well-being. A third attribute is communicating clear performance expectations. Our audience also noted this frequently as one of the attributes they most wanted. This is really about making sure that success is defined. What is it that's regarded to be good performance? Setting priorities when working with knowledge workers, for example, who might have multiple projects running simultaneously, and very importantly, providing feedback so that guidance can be given to subordinate employees and helping them ensure that they are on target with their contributions. The fourth attribute is providing recognition. This is psychological appreciation, the praising of good work, making sure that employees are given due credit when they've made a good idea, a good suggestion, a good recommendation, or done something novel or innovative, that the credit goes to them, and certainly noting their loyalty to the job and to the organization. What I noticed was that this wasn't very frequently identified by our panel today in that poll, but we'll come back and talk about that just a little bit later. The fifth attribute is rewarding performance contributions. Of course, employees understand that managers have limitations over how much control they have with regard to compensation schemes, but they do expect their manager to be an advocate for fair compensation. But actually, while fair compensation is half of what they define as rewarding performance contributions, the other half is the manager's role in growth and development of the employee and making sure that they have growth opportunities. The sixth attribute is a little different, problem solving, decision making. This is about working for a boss who makes good decisions, knocks obstacles out of the way in the getting done of the work, creating workable solutions. And certainly it draws upon the cognitive mental ability, the IQ of the manager to size up a situation and make a good decision. The seventh attribute, as we pull that up, being fair and just. I think this was frequently identified by our polling apparatus today. This is about being consistent, equitable, treating people objectively, not having pet employees, showing the same flexibility to all. And there's another and final attribute that's really kind of a first cousin to being fair and just, and that's being honest and trustworthy. This is the integrity attribute. Does the manager do what they say they are going to do? Are they transparent? Are they truthful? Are they forthright in their communication? So these are the 8 universal attributes. And interestingly enough, as we conducted the research, 98% of everything we were told from the employee voice fitted into one of these 8 attributes, one of these 8 categories. So we know we're covering the broad band of what employees most want from their immediate boss. I want to share with you a little bit of a different cut in the next slide as we look at this, because we have color coding here to represent different clusters, showing support and understanding, treating employees with dignity and respect. If you stop to think about it, those are behaviors of a manager in building a great relationship with employees. Communicating clear performance expectations, providing recognition, rewarding performance. These are behaviors in which managers engage that have to do with building up the performance of employees. Problem solving, decision making is really a skill. A skill is something we become good at because we practice. And then finally, we would define fair and just and honest and trustworthy as personal standards of conduct. So these are really the values that employees want to see displayed by their managers on a day-by-day basis. So these are the 8 attributes. This is how we believe initially they cluster. Of course, these aren't completely mutually exclusive. If you are fair and just, you're also going to be contributing to building a high quality relationship, for example, and so forth. But this is the basic framework of what employees most want from their immediate boss. Now, the question might come up, well, this is great. You've got a framework, you've got scientifically a taxonomy, but what's the real value of knowing what employees want? And I want to share with you some research that may help answer that question of why this is important to know. First of all, interestingly enough, we know that managers often overestimate their competence. I did ask managers on a scale of 1 to 5 to self-rate. That's the middle column of scores against their display of skill in work management, people management, overall effectiveness, and the extent to which they were outstanding leaders. I got data from 1,000 managers who self-rated. Then I asked their employees, how do these managers rate? And again, with a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest score, you can see that employees did not rate their managers nearly the same as managers rated themselves. So if we overestimate our own competence, then we might be blind to areas in which we could improve so as to become a more effective manager. Let's take a look at another slice. Managers sometimes lack awareness. When I conducted the research, I was able to cut the data by the various countries involved. These are data from the United States. Actually, 25% of employees in the US, for example, said that they most wanted support and understanding. Another 13% said they most wanted recognition. Together, that totals up to 38%, which is a pretty high percent out of the 100% maximum possible. When we asked managers what employees most want, only 16% said support and understanding, and astonishingly to me, only 1% identified recognition as what they thought employees most wanted. Now, to be sure, managers were pretty close on 6 other attributes, but they missed the mark here by a pretty significant margin. And again, if we are unaware of what employees most want or what they feel they need in order to be successful, and we're not delivering that, it's a great missed opportunity. We can take a look at some additional data, though. And this really is important when we start to think about, as adults, what are the most important needs we have that have to be met in order for our motivation and our performance to be at the highest. There are 3. First of all, we need to be viewed as competent. It's important for us to know that others view us as competent. Secondly, we need to be related to others. That is, to have close, healthy working relationships, not only with our bosses, of course, but with coworkers and others within the organization. And then thirdly, we need to work with little intervention. We want to work in an autonomous fashion without the pressure of close supervision. When these 3 conditions are met, these 3 needs are met, employee motivation and performance is at its highest level. Well, how does that relate to the 8 attributes of the employee-centric manager? Well, let's think about that. Actually, when a manager communicates clearly about performance, provides recognition, rewards performance, and helps the employee get their job done through good problem solving and decision making, all of that contributes to the fulfillment of the need for competence. Then, if we start to think about relatedness, when the manager shows support and understanding, treats employees with dignity and respect, is fair and just, honest and trustworthy, naturally, that's going to contribute to the satisfaction of the relatedness need. And then finally, when it's assumed that employees are there to do a good job and they know what it is that's expected of them, they're in a better position to work in a more autonomous fashion, and that need is met. So really, if we stop to think about it, managers showing up with a display of these attributes contribute significantly to the needs that are necessary for employees to operate with the highest levels of motivation and performance. Another way to look at this, and I feel like I was in a very fortunate position to have all of these data, but let's take a step back just a moment. If we're going to evaluate the performance of a manager, I think all of us would probably argue that a manager might be evaluated to a certain extent on the basis of the quality of the experience of their employees, the level of engagement of their employees, the extent to which the teams they manage have an absence of dysfunction, that is, they work cohesively, and ultimately the performance of the team is high. Well, I was, again, in a very fortunate position where I had the ratings of 1,000 managers on the employee-centric manager attributes. And what I was able to find was that those who were rated in the middle are actually achieving about 70% of the potential. Those rated at the bottom are achieving much less, only about 20% of the employee potential and 40% of the team potential. But those who are rated as the highest, in the highest category, are achieving just about everything there is to achieve in terms of employee experience, engagement, and both team cohesion and performance. And so this is really where the rubber meets the road. Managers who are extremely effective at displaying these attributes are creating outcomes for employees that are extremely beneficial. We also had the opportunity to look at what explains managerial effectiveness. And of course, we know that there's a lot of things that go into a manager's overall effectiveness ratings. But when we conducted our research on 1,000 managers and their effectiveness ratings, we found that actually 67% of their effectiveness could be explained by how they are rated on the employee-centric manager attributes. Well, that does mean that 33% is explained by other factors, but this gets into experience in that particular industry, perhaps. Their IQ, their cognitive mental ability, the fit within the culture of the organization, and so forth. But it's remarkable that 67% of their effectiveness rating can be explained by how they're rated on the ECM attributes. Another way of looking at this is that in order to be highly effective, you have to be rated quite favorably on the ECM attributes. Or said differently, it's really hard, almost impossible, to get a high quality effectiveness rating without displaying the attributes of the employee-centric manager. So how do we put all of this together? Well, in a theory is simply something that explains and predicts based on observable data. And what we have observed is that when managers display the 2 relationship behaviors and the 3 performance behaviors, that gives us our 5 in the 5-1-2 theory, as well as the 1 skill and the 2 values. They are seen as a more effective manager overall. That helps create employee outcomes in the areas of experience and engagement, and team outcomes in terms of chemistry and performance that lead to managerial success, defined as their own ability to achieve promotions and higher compensation. So the theory holds together, and all of the data points support the prediction of managerial success based on the display of these 8 attributes. So that's the basic idea. And what I'm going to do now is talk a little bit about the training program, but I want to turn it over to my trusted colleague, Leslie Minchin, with whom I've had the pleasure of delivering this training program on several occasions, and regard her as someone who's become steeped in understanding the employee-centric manager attributes and her ability to help others understand how they can display these attributes to achieve higher levels of personal success.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just kind of give you an idea of what the program looks like, so that you can, like I said, we want to take you through a couple of exercises and get a feel for it. So in the setup of prior to the workshop, we do the feedback survey. So this is where the manager has an opportunity to go through the questionnaire and reflect on their own performance as a manager, and see how they would rate themselves. And then we also get the feedback from their direct reports. And then once that has been completed, the manager will get a full report, and it will be able to help them bring in that awareness that he was just talking about, right? So it gives the manager the opportunity to see, this is how I feel like I'm doing as a manager. Here's really how my employees are viewing me. And during the workshop, we will then walk everybody through their assessment. We help them understand the feedback they received. But really, we're looking at what are the areas that you want to improve as a manager? What are the areas that you're seeing for your employees that are most important to them that you want to focus on? And it could be areas where you're already strong, but you see how important it is to your team, and you can find, what are some ways that I can continue to stay strong in this, and can I improve it even more? So we do walk you through all of those steps. And actually, if you want to, we can take a look here at the survey. This is just an example of what that looks like. And actually, it will give you an idea here of the high you see in the green. And this indicates on, actually, I'm going to ask Dr. Jack, I'm going to ask you to explain the differences here, because I'm thinking, I know that you'll do more justice than I will on these particular parts here.
Right. Thanks, Leslie. So basically, these are 3 real life manager profiles. One of them comes from a CHRO and a Fortune 500 company. In this case, it was a he. He was rated extremely highly on the attributes that appear in green, and was above average in the attributes that appear in gold. This is a very effective manager, highly regarded by his direct reports. In the second example, in the middle column, we have a division manager of a small to medium enterprise. As you can see, their overall performance is rated as high, and they're actually above average on everything except for rewarding performance with training and development opportunities. And so that's really an area where they can grow and develop and contribute more to the careers of those reporting to them. And the final example, this comes from a first-line supervisor in a logistics operation. And as you can see, there are some areas in which they're above average, primarily in the performance behaviors, except for rewarding performance, but areas where they're below average as well. In the values, the display of the values, their overall performance, and then we do have an ECM summary score as the bottom row. So they've got quite a bit more work to do. And I think I remember this particular application where they were a bit surprised by their scores, but motivated to go to work on these areas. And this is one of the things the training was aimed to do, to give them some great ideas about how they can leverage where they are now to perform at a much higher level.
Perfect. Yeah. And I know when we get to this part of the workshop, a lot of times the questions are, where do I start? What's most important? Or, oh my gosh, how do I make this better? So then I'm going to actually take you through a little sample example and how we go about diving into the attributes. So we go into each one of them, and today I'll walk you through recognition. And so we first start off by talking about, what does it even mean? And again, this is from the perspective of the employees. And so in the research, Dr. Jack asked them, when you say recognition, what do you mean? And so from employees, they're saying, well, recognition means it's complimenting and praising good work. It's giving employees credit for good ideas and acknowledging them for their loyalty to the job and to the organization. So once we talk a little bit about that, the next thing that we do is go into an exercise, and we start looking at examples. And first one is the first critical incident is the nice example, right? And so for this one, critical incident number one, and I also like to state, these are also directly from the research. These aren't made up scenarios. This is truly saying, tell me about a time when you experienced recognition from your manager. So in this example, the employee said, my manager personally came down to me on a busy day to tell me that he appreciated all that I do to help our team meet its goals. It caught me off guard, but it made me feel good to know I am valued. And then we talk about what could sorry, go back there. All right. And then we talk about, fantastic, what was the manager doing well? And so I mentioned earlier, we like to keep this interactive. And so we open up the conversation. What are the things that you're seeing here? And what's really interesting about this is there's nothing that is like earth-shattering, I never knew this was important. It's just something that you go, oh yeah, that's right. It does mean something to people. It is important. And so we really dive into why. Why does it matter? And you can also see the impact that this manager had on this employee, showing that recognition, taking time out of their day, not being, the manager knowing it is a very busy day, took time out of their day to come notice this person and thank them. And the impact it has on that employee is that they are probably going to continue to keep putting forth this effort and keep contributing to the team, keep, finding ways to be productive and add that value because they feel appreciated. So you can see the impact of this manager providing recognition in a positive way. So we talk a lot about that, and we get other ideas, what are other things that you're seeing? And then we go into another critical incident. And this may not be as ideal of a situation. So in this particular scenario, I was asked to fill in for a coworker on medical leave. I was cross-trained to do their work, but was never thanked for filling in while also doing my job. I do my work to the best of my ability, and many days I have to put in extra time to get it all done, but never once have I gotten a thank you. So again, this is where we open it up. We say, well, how could the manager have done a better job? And it seems like, well, the easiest thing is just say thank you. How much would that cost, right? Just a few minutes. But we dig into more behind that as well. So if you think about this one, what is the impact on that employee? And you can start to see, oh, this employee who doesn't feel appreciated next time may not be as willing to jump in and help. They may not feel like it is, worth their time and effort to continue to put forth their time without that recognition. So you can start to see that manager impacted that employee because they were not providing recognition. All right. So now, as I promised, you're going to have a chance to do some self-reflection. And if you have anything here that you want to add in, for sure, keep that Q&A going. But I want you to think, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just want you to think about this for yourself. Do you show appreciation in ways employees find most meaningful? Are you timely in providing deserved recognition? And do you give employees credit for their good ideas? Now, when we're in the workshop, the managers are looking at their report and they're seeing exactly how their team rated them on these areas. And so they can kind of, look at what their reflection is versus what their team said. And they can start to get some ideas of really how is it showing up for the employees. And then we always ask everybody, even if you scored very high in this area, still through the conversation that we've had, what are some ideas that you've come up with today that you could improve in recognizing your employees? Let's pause there. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I just think that one of the principles that we built into the training program is a lot of interaction. We know that adults learn better by example and performance rather than being talked to. So other than outlining what the employee-centric manager is and some ideas for how they can improve, it's really based on an interaction approach with the participants in the workshop where they're gaining insights from one another, hopefully as well as insights that we can provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And on that, for additional things that we'd like to add, after each attribute, and we talk through the activities, we get reflections, we then go into a little bit more about, based on the research, what did we find? Employees, what they want you to do when it comes to providing recognition. First of all, they just want you to thank them for doing a good job. And they want you to be timely and specific with praise. So, not just thanks for doing a good job, but, you showed up prepared, you talked about the things that were most important, and this is the impact that you had. It really drives that recognition and makes much more of an impact. And then tailor the recognition to the individual. So we talk more about each of these pieces. What does it mean? How does it show up? What's the impact of doing it versus not doing it? And then we talk about, what do employees not want you to do, right? They don't want you to make it look like it's a chore to give recognition. We talk about not mixing in negative feedback with praise. Why is it important to just stick with the feedback that you need to provide? And certainly do not take credit for their ideas. And then we wrap up this section with additional advice when it comes to providing recognition. So recognize employees for a positive attitude. And that helps the rest of the team realize, oh, this is what we're working towards. This is what is helpful. This is what success looks like. And spotlight your employees to higher up. So spotlight those employees to your manager, your manager's manager. It makes a difference. And then certainly recognizing the loyalty to the job and to the company. So that's a little look at one of the attributes and how we take you through that. And some of them have a little bit different activities and a bigger scenario that we talk through, but that just gives you a little taste of that. But some of the benefits when you think about the ECM training in and of itself is we've talked about the awareness that it brings about. And we've noticed it going both ways, where some managers aren't giving themselves enough credit for how much of an impact, a positive impact they're having on their team. And so it can help to boost their confidence, and it can help them to see, where am I doing well in the eyes of my employees? And then it also helps to bring about that awareness on the opposite end of that. If they say, I think I'm doing a great job, and they just have those blind spots, it helps them to see where they can improve, again, based on the employee's perspective. The other thing that's fantastic is it does provide specific action. So not just theoretically, this is what we're thinking, but it's based on the science, and it's giving you action to take today that you can improve on. The action plan itself, so throughout the day, we're talking through what are ways you can improve, what are things you're learning from, other managers in the room, and getting those best practices. And then at the end of it all, you say, oh, here are the 2 things I'm going to focus on, right? So even today, when we talked about that self-reflection, think about the things that you wrote down and think about something very small that you could do going forward to just focus on improving a little bit of recognition. So that's what the managers walk away with, is that action plan. And we tell them just focus on 2 things, because quite honestly, you improve on those areas, you're going to kind of accidentally improve on the other areas as well, because they are so related. We also recommend, and it depends on the company and the setup, but we say share this with your manager and have that extra accountability built in, so that you are working towards that action plan. And then my favorite part of it too is then we come back later, 6 to 9 months later, and do the survey again to measure success, right? So it's not something that you have a fantastic day and put it on the shelf. You really are taking steps every day, and we'll measure that later. So, all right. What managers are saying. So these are some of the things that we're noticing. Just through that one day of going through this, is being able to understand and the value that they get from knowing how their employees see them. What is that feedback, and how can they keep that top of mind, and how can they continue to focus on that to build that relationship and that strong work with their team. All right.
We have some questions.
I know, I was going to say, I can keep going on forever and ever, but I'm just going to pause for questions.
The first question is, it seems to me that the compensation and training opportunities are limited to the budget that is given to the line supervisor, meaning they might have any decision-making capabilities to shift compensation, growth, and training because it's decided by HR, and the limits given to them. So in this case, it seems unfair to assess someone on the qualities they have no control over. Can we comment on that?
Well, I think we did recognize at the beginning that managers may have limitations in terms of the budgets they're given to work with. But that having been said, that doesn't mean that there aren't ways in which they can advocate for fair compensation, or think about what is a meaningful reward to employees. Sometimes being rewarded with a $10 gift card, a $25 gift card, a pizza lunch, a one-on-one outside of the office lunch opportunity, and learning perhaps new skills by being teamed up with others within the team from whom they can learn. There are a lot of things that are available to managers that don't necessarily require the approval of HR or the approval of a manager up the chain of command. And so the question is a valid one, certainly something we understand, but we also believe in our heart of hearts that there are things that managers can do. The other piece of this is just being honest with the framework. If this was one of the areas that employees identified as what was most important to them, to not include it in the framework or its rating within the framework, because managers may have some limitations about what they can do, didn't seem to be a truly valid way of putting together the upward feedback survey. So judgment call there, but that's the rationale for that.
I would actually even add in that, and not that this is a shameless plug that we've gone through this training as an organization ourselves. However, I can see that being kind of like you feel like your hands are tied as a leader. But there are other ways that we looked at it, even in my own department, and it was more along the lines of, are there videos, are there free things that are out there that can educate somebody on a small skill or improve a skill that they have that can help in that growth process when you do have some of those, budget constraints on those larger, I think, training. So it's also meant to kind of think out of the box a little bit when you do have constraints.
Yeah, and another thing I would add from experience, and Leslie and I just finished working with a client who could be described in this way, that their managers scored the lowest on rewarding performance contributions But actually, on the time to survey, which occurred 6 months after the training, this was the attribute that had improved the most. So I think we have a demonstration right there of an organization that whose managers actually improved the most on an area that they regarded, like the question implied, as an area over which they had very little control. They proved to themselves that there were a number of things they could do to contribute to the rewards people felt, both in terms of comp and training and development opportunities.
Right. We will open it up for more questions. If anybody has any, please just drop them in the Q&A. I'll even add again, I think it's important, for people listening that we've experienced this. We've experienced the training to understand, and I think it was an eye opener. I think Leslie and Jack both throughout this presentation, you talked about the gap between what employees want and what the manager thinks that they want. And it is interesting where you think you are one way, but you're really not. And then it's how do you take that and turn it into the positive? So when the survey does come back, it looks, you can see the improvement that you've made based on knowing the information. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions, so we're happy to give back 15 minutes extra to everyone's day if we are good. And then also feel free to email us at info@engagetoexcel.com if something else does come up that you'd like the answer to, and we can get it to Jack and Leslie.
Fantastic.
Great. Well, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Leslie. And thank you for everybody who attended today. Have a great afternoon.